This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist, the best listen and learn boxing show on the web. My name is Frank Lotierzo, former fighter, part-time writer, full-time observer. I am joined by co-host Jack Hirsch, 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association of America. We have a great show tonight. We were off last week. There's a lot of things to catch up on, a weekend of fights, some fights coming down the road that we want to talk about. And we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to educate, have some fun, listen and learn. Jack, good evening. How are you?
Hey, good evening, Frank. How you doing? Busy weekend this past weekend in boxing.
4 main fights. I think the one that most people were interested in that they saw was the grudge match between Kell Brook and Amir Khan, a fight that has been talked about, it seems like, forever. They finally came together, touched gloves, and I think it kind of went the way, Jack, that we both thought. It wasn't a fight that we were going to make a pick on because Khan hadn't fought in 2.5 years. Brook hadn't fought in 15 months. The one thing they had in common besides being rivals was they were both stopped by Terrence Crawford recently in their last few fights. You know, everybody questioned Khan's chin. And I think after Crawford beat Brook up, some had questions about his chin. They came together. Brook gets a stoppage in the 6th round. I don't know how you scored it, Jack. I scored it live. I gave Brook every round but the 2nd, but I really never felt that Khan was in the fight. It was just a matter of time.
Yeah, I gave Khan 1 round. You know, you mentioned the term, Frank, grudge match, and you post a lot of good things. But I'd like to see you post this question one time. How many fights are truly grudge matches? Because when they end, the fighters are posing with one another, shaking hands, trying to...
But I like that.
Tries to console the loser, but it happens all the time. A real grudge match is you beat the guy and then you continue to stick it to him after. That's a real grudge match. The term is maybe a little overplayed, grudge match. Maybe... we should use the word rivals because that was a fight, you know, Amir Khan and Kell Brook that should have been made a lot of years. It was way past its expiration date for it to count a great deal to me. Like,
Jack, here's what I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. And this is not playing good cop, bad cop. I understand what you're saying, but remember, this rivalry goes back to 2004 because Khan got the berth in the Olympics, and we know what he did. He went on to win the Olympics. However,
he won a silver medal. He won the
silver medal, but he still competed. Brook never got to go.
Got like a big star out of the Olympics,
Jack.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, you know, in leading up to the fight, it's ugly and it seems personal. But at the end of the day, when the fight is over, I have no issue with these guys coming together, saluting each other, acknowledging what they did and how tough the other guy was. And I think once it's over, it's not personal, and we can see them get together like Brook and Khan did. Look, Lewis made peace with Schmeling. Cooney and Holmes made peace. Ali and Frazier eventually made peace. Not where they were active, but eventually they do come together. So I don't have a problem with that because
no, that's okay. It's a beautiful thing for fighters to come together and have that respect, especially in later years after they're retired. But the greatest rivalry in boxing history, I think we're both on the same page. Not for the number of fights. I'm not talking about Jack Britton and Ted Kid Lewis, who fought a ridiculous amount of times.
17 times.
Ali and Frazier. That was really the greatest rivalry of our lifetime. Let's put it that way.
Agreed.
After all three of their fights, you never saw them hug at the
Isn't that something?
First fight, Frazier yelled in Ali's face. That was a grudge. Second fight, they both went to their corner. They didn't even touch gloves. At the press conference after, Frazier stuck out his hand as he was leaving to just shake his hand. That was a sportsmanlike thing. The third fight after Manila, maybe they were too exhausted, but they didn't come over to one another in the ring. Those were kind of like grudge matches, but there were mutual respect. I just think the term grudge match is kind of a little overplayed. I think the fighter builds it up in his head to dislike his opponent, that he has a grudge, but he doesn't really have a grudge. I think true grudge matches are so rare.
I'm cool with Khan and Brooke coming together, knowing that they're never going to fight again. It's over with. And Jack, remember something.
I am too, but I don't feel it was a true grudge, because you know what a grudge is? If the two guys would be mad at one another now, if Kell Brook would still be ticked off at Amir Khan today, that's a grudge match, saying, I'm glad I kicked his behind, because I can't stand the SOB.
Okay, Jack, but I think that changes because once we've been in there and we felt each other, I think there's a respect between both guys. It's like, okay, we gave it our best. One of us won, one lost. We're not going to go out in the parking lot and fight, so we can bury this right there. And again, Ali Frazier is one of the real – that's a unique rivalry because it was so much more than boxing.
I have a grudge with both guys because I still don't know what would have happened had the two of them fought when they were at their peaks.
Brooke would have kicked his ass.
This fight last Saturday doesn't show anything for me. The Amir Khan, who completely, and underline the word completely, dominated every moment of his fight against Zab Judah, basically Paul Malignaggi, Louis Glazo, quality fighters who still had a fair amount left. He totally dominated those guys. I can't say with confidence that he would have lost to Kell Brook. I would have given him a good chance. Listen, that chin of his, when he fought Danny Garcia, he was beating Garcia. The chin let him down.
Jack, he's a boxer with quick hands. He's always going to be in the lead. I would take Kell Brook every day of the week. And remember, think about what Kell Brook did. After he beats Porter and he makes a couple defenses, he goes up and fights prime Golovkin. And he was winning the fight until Golovkin finally imposed himself, and then he got beat up. And then shortly after that, because the title wasn't on the line, he fights Errol Spence, and he's beating him, and then his eye gives out again. I think Brook has had the better career. I think he's the tougher guy.
In the early going.
What's that?
He was beating Terrence Crawford early in the fight.
He was, but Crawford's one of those guys that sits back a little bit, and then once he gets a read, he goes in and he operates. I'm not going to put much credence in that, but I'm just saying this, and I said this before the fight. The best Kell Brook I saw would beat the best Amir Khan every day of the week. I think he's too strong. I think he has better fundamentals. I think he's a more durable guy, and I actually think he has wins over better people.
Yeah, Amir, you know why it took so long for the fight to take place? I put the burden more on Amir Khan for a couple of reasons why it took so long.
He was a star and dictated.
He was a bigger star than Kell Brook. He had more lucrative options than Kell Brook. Kell Brook needed Amir Khan a lot more than he needed him.
I agree, Joe.
Such as Junior Whittier needed Ricky Hatton a lot more, but Whittier opened up his mouth basically, and he insulted Hatton. And Hatton did a brilliant thing. He said, I'm going to get back at this guy, not by beating him up in the ring, by not fighting him, not rewarding him with a big fight. That's the best way to get back at someone if you're a bigger star.
Sugar Ray Leonard made that an art.
Yeah, well, Sugar Ray picked his spots, but that was a great, great win by Kell Brook. Best thing for him to do would be to retire, but the
not going to happen
now. He's in position for a big domestic fight in England against unbeaten Conor Benn. That fight will do tremendous business, make him millions of dollars, perhaps. Okay, and it's hard to walk away from that. He doesn't. I'm going to tell you now, Frank. I'm not second guessing. He's not beating Conor Benn.
I wish I could disagree with you, Jack. He's not.
Going to send him into retirement. Too young, fast. Kell Brook looked good against this diminished version.
Against the guy that was an empty package.
He's not going to hit Conor Benn with the same punches. And even if he gets through now and then, it's not going to have much of an effect. This isn't the same, Kell Brook from years ago. Not the same.
Right. The best Kell Brook beats any version of Conor from what I've seen.
Well, Conor Benn is young. He's upcoming. But, it's just not happening for him. But the idea that you think Kell Brook can beat Conor Benn right now makes it a lucrative. You don't think he could do it now?
No, I don't think he can. No.
Oh, okay.
I think that, the best Kell Brook would beat Conor Benn, but not the one we saw the other night. We both know they were both an empty package, but Kell Brook had more. He's the better guy fundamentally, and he's more durable. And that was the difference. But he's going to make a ton of money. And how do you walk, Jack? How do you walk away from it? You box a majority of your life up until you're 30, 35, like these guys are, and then they're offering you huge money. How do you walk away when you say, I worked my whole life to get into this position? How do I walk away from that? So I do think that we're going to see Kell Brook against Conor Benn. And all I'll say is this. I hope that Kell Brook's corner has the towel ready. And when it gets real bad, they don't let him take a beating.
It's hard. If the guy could make life-altering money, I don't tell him to walk away. If Kell Brook doesn't have the financial security of fighting all these years, and chances are he might not. He's had some lucrative fights, but maybe not the blockbuster fight. And he might look and say, look, if I take this fight, I'm set the rest of my life. I certainly can't fault him for that. There were other fights over the weekend. Jorge Linares gets stopped in round 12 by Zaire Abdullayev. And I'm going to tell you, Jorge Linares now, in my opinion, has officially become a gatekeeper.
Absolutely.
Okay, now, after this loss, he's still going to fight name guys, but he's going to be the yardstick of measurement. If you can't beat Jorge Linares, you're not top of the line. You beat him, you are top of the line, that type of thing. Listen, he came up with a great effort against Devin Haney, lost the decision, came on in the late rounds, Linares. He fought Lomachenko, real tough fight in Florida.
Dropped him, was in the fight.
Stopped. Right. But then I see him get stopped in one round in New York by Pablo Cano. So you never know with Linares, and it seems like he's been around forever. And
I want to see him retire, Jack. I think, again, he'll be a stepping stone.
Yeah.
And here's the thing that I saw in the Abdullah fight. He doesn't even flinch. When guys get older, it's like his reflexes are so bad that he doesn't even flinch and he doesn't move and he gets hit. That's a bad sign. He's a tough guy. He'll take a beating. At one time, he was beautiful to watch, but those days, those days are gone.
Yeah, no. Listen, we're on the same page there. Another fight, another so-called big name. Jaime Munguia wins yet again, stopping Demetrius Ballard in 3 rounds. Now, I saw the fight after so first round by Munguia. He started going to work, his heavy punches, put away Ballard. But I'm going to tell you, I'm a little tired of Munguia's career the way it's went. After he beat Saddam Ali, stopped Saddam Ali.
Exactly.
Saddam had beat Miguel Cotto. I thought, and other people thought, this could be a star in the making. Could this be the second coming of Canelo Alvarez? Okay.
Right.
I mean, I wasn't sure. I wanted to see more. And they basically avoided the big names. They've avoided any fights that would present a very serious threat to Munguia, who's a middleweight. No
what's interesting, Jack?
Carlo brothers, none against Andrade. I thought they'd match him for Canelo, at least cash out an all-Mexican fight. But it's if Golden Boy Promotions, who promotes him, they're like scared to take any type of a risk, and you got to take a risk at some point.
What impressed me about him wasn't so much the fight. I saw highlights. I didn't see the whole fight. But the idea that he admitted he has to step up in opposition and make a move. Because I felt the same way. After this Adam Ali fight, I thought, this guy might be something. We haven't seen it. He hasn't fought anybody yet. 38-0, 30 knockouts. Looks good. 1 or 2 signature wins. And if you really examine them, they're not real big wins.
Yeah. I mean, he's a good fighter. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's a hype job, but people aren't talking about him, and they shouldn't be talking about him that much. But at this point in his career, let's find out whether he has what it takes or doesn't. I mean, a big payday. I mean, he couldn't fight Canelo now. You want to know what would be the problem, him against Canelo? What I said a moment ago, I didn't think of it till now. He's promoted by Golden Boy Munguia, and Canelo had to falling out with Golden Boy. He won't do business with them in any way, shape, or form. So there goes that big payday. But but speaking of Canelo, Frank, tell us what the latest is.
Well, there's 2 rumors going around, and he's supposed to sign a multi-fight deal. In one scenario, he fights Dimitri Bivol, and then he has the trilogy fight with Golovkin. The other one is he fights for Eddie Hearn, and he fights Jamal Charlo, Mall, Jamal Charlo, and then David Benavidez.
Oh, now, that looks like it's Al Heyman, not Eddie Hearn. Al Heyman. Al Heyman's with the Charlos, and Benavidez.
That's that. Okay, that's right. I mixed that up. Okay, but I would rather see the Charlo. I would rather see the Charlo and Benavidez fight, and I'll tell you why. Because there's 2 good fights there. Charlo is mean and nasty. He can punch. He has a good chin, and he needs a big win. And Canelo, the superstar, would be the perfect guy for that. After that, you have Benitez, who is the only guy in the super middleweight division who you can make a case probably is a 50-50 fight with Canelo. I think we both would pick Canelo, but it's not a big lean. Conversely, if he fights Bivol first, it's a nice win. Nobody can accuse him of ducking. He would be fighting the perceived second best light heavyweight in the world. If he won that fight, that would be big. And I'll tell you this much. Stylistically, Bivol is a style because he moves. He would make Canelo pick his feet up. He boxes. He uses the jab to offset things. That could be a little trouble for Canelo. And then he would fight Golovkin. You and I have both talked about this. I don't like the Golovkin rematch. They fought 2 times, 24 rounds. Golovkin has never had Canelo in trouble. He's too shot and slow right now. At the higher weight, Canelo is even stronger and more confident. I even think there's a good chance that Canelo would stop Golovkin on his feet in the 3rd fight this time. So I have no interest in that, but I think that's what we're going to see.
I agree with you, Frank. Unfortunately, the public wants the Golovkin fight. That would do the biggest business.
Why do you think that is? Because you're right. They really do.
They're not as astute as you are, Frank. They don't see that Golovkin, since the last Canelo fight, he slipped Sergey Deverchenko. I hope I'm pronouncing the name right.
Yes, and some people thought he lost.
I was at ringside. I had Golovkin losing by a point.
There you go.
I had him losing, but he got the decision. It was close enough where I'm not complaining and saying he didn't deserve it. It could have gone either way, even though I had Golovkin down.
And he has to get past Murata in his next fight.
That might not happen. I mean, I would think he would have enough left to get the job done. But I just don't, I just don't like the idea.
It's touch and go. I agree
with Canelo, but it's basically Canelo waited Golovkin out since their second fight for him to slip enough. Now it's a safe fight. I agree with you with Bivol. Style-wise, he has the style to treble Canelo, style-wise.
But he boxes and moves.
Right. I don't think he has the talent to beat him point blank. I'm just looking at talent, okay? He's not a natural puncher. He'll jab. He'll move to the side. He'll land 1 or 2 punches at a time. It's not like Charlo, who could get off combinations.
No, Charlo that's an alpha fight.
Represent much more of a threat of beating Canelo, much more of a threat. And like you said, the Benavidez fight, right now, I would lean towards Canelo, but I don't know what I'll think come fight time, because Benavidez still has some upside. I think he could still improve, but we don't know what Benavidez is doing. Is he getting fat in the meantime? Is he in the gym? If he's living the life of a fighter all along, Benavidez, and
could be a problem for Canelo.
Right. And he's
lost the title on the scale twice, right?
Right. But that's how Canelo's basically marking time, picking his spots. And after he beats Bivol, which I feel he'll definitely do, and Triple G, he's going to continue to pick his spots. Okay.
See, I think he'll beat Bivol. I do think that. But you know what the main reason is? I know he will not be stopped. And we both know that a lot of times, especially with a guy like Canelo Mayweather, money dictates. So if it's a close fight, Canelo's going to get the edge.
I will say a close fight, Frank, with Bivol. I just don't think.
You really think he walks through him? I don't know if he walks through him, Jack.
I don't think he walks through him. I think he beats him decisively, wins 9 out of 12 rounds. That type of fight. And I think Bivol is competitive, holds his own, is competitive, kind of like Plant was in the last fight.
Let me say this.
Except he maybe goes the distance where Plant got stopped late.
And I've said this before on this show, and I'm going to use 2 guys, the 2 perceived best pound-for-pound guys in boxing. I believe when we see Canelo get beat, it will not be by a guy who tries to go through him and knocks him out. It's going to be by a guy who can box, give him angles, make him pick his feet up, and reset. Bivol has that. So I think that can be more of a problem than, say, a Benavidez or a Charlo. I think Charlo makes for a better fight. And the same thing with Terrence Crawford. I don't think we'll be outboxed because we'll ever see him outboxed when he loses, because he's too mean. He's too aggressive. I think to beat Crawford, it's going to take a guy who can come in and physically overwhelm him. So I have some interest in the Bivol fight, and I'm not sure if you agree with me here, but you know what, Jack? Canelo is such a lightning rod, and I've read all over social media that this is a duck and that's a duck. I'm sorry. This is a guy coming up. All right, he had trouble making junior middleweight, and we know they had to boil him down. But he's fighting the second best, or the perceived second best light heavyweight in the world, who's undefeated. That's not a duck. That is a duck under no metric can that be called a duck.
Let's make believe for 1 second. Let's just make believe. This is fantasy land. Canelo sees both Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch, and he says, guys, I want to fight the toughest fights, the guys who are the biggest threats. Be honest with me. Start writing them down. Who represents the greatest threats? It's not about money. Those are the guys I'm going to fight. You and I are going to sit down, and before the guys he's going to fight, we're going to write down the names. Beterbiev, Demetrius Andrade. We'll write maybe Jamal Charlo. Maybe
I'm not putting Andrade down. You are.
Yeah, and I tell Canelo, I think Andrade beats you, and if you're really, and that's but who else are you going to put down? I mean, if he had,
I would like to see. Now, are we talking about for him to lose or exciting fight?
He says he wants us to get him the guys who are most likely to beat him, and those are the guys he wants to fight. We're not going to give him heavyweights. We're not going to put
Right, or cruiserweight.
Right, a cruiserweight, but from light heavyweight, because since it looks like he's fighting one of the light heavyweight champions, okay?
Right.
It's fair to put light heavyweights. We won't go with cruiserweight. Light.
Right, okay.
Anywhere from welter. You know who I might put on the list, Frank? Crazy as it seems, Terrence Crawford.
Jack, that's crazy.
No, listen, Frank. Was it crazy when Sugar Ray Robinson gave up all that weight? Don't tell me, well, Crawford's no Sugar Ray Robinson. He's his era's version of Sugar Ray Robinson compared to what you have around in a certain sense. I'm not putting him on a level with the Sugar Ray Robinson. I'm talking about within his own era. Okay?
Jack, I love Terrence Crawford. He's the best fighter in boxing. He would get mutilated by Canelo. He is the type guy that would give him trouble because he couldn't hurt Canelo, and Canelo could walk him down and eventually beat him down. Now, as far as my list goes, the toughest fights I think for Canelo are Beterbiev, Bivol because of size, style, and jab. And then I would probably say Charlo, Andrade, and Golovkin.
You see, we have a difference of opinion. Now, first of all, I don't think I'd put Golovkin number 5, but that's not so bad. You're putting him number 5 based on his resume, even though I don't think I'd put him that high. But, okay, so we have a distinct difference of opinion, Frank. You're putting Bivol number 2. So according to your formula, you're more tolerant and more respectful of what Canelo's doing than I'm doing. I'm going to tell you why. If he fights Bivol first, that's the second toughest guy he could fight. Not bad. So if he beats Bivol, which we both expect him to do, then he's allowed an easy fight. I'm a believer if a guy has one hard fight, then he has an easy fight, then a hard fight. I don't like when there are 2 easy fights in a row. Then it starts irking me. But I can understand if he has a major, challenge there. What about Joe Smith, Frank, who's our producer?
Against Canelo?
Mac loves him. Mac feels he beat Canelo.
But that's because he's a New York guy, and Mac is a little bit biased that way. We both know that.
Connecticut guy. He's a Connecticut guy, but I guess he has to adopt the New York guys because since the days of Marlon Starling and John Scully, well, he had. Now there's been a few. There've been some other good fighters in Connecticut.
Joe Smith is dangerous against anybody, Jack, because he has one thing he can't teach. He's got dynamite in that right hand, but Bivol pretty much boxed him in circles. And again, I go back to Bivol for this. I'm talking about tough fights. I don't think Canelo knocks Bivol out. So that fight goes the distance. If Caleb Plant can box Canelo and keep him at bay for 6 or 7 rounds before he can get inside and really work him over, I think Bivol has a chance. I wouldn't pick him, but I could see him being a very difficult night for Canelo because guys that jab, don't try to take his head off and move, have their way. Look, Amir Khan was boxing Canelo until he got caught. Add Bivol with 25 pounds, a better chin, a stiffer jab, more physical strength. I think it's a tough fight. Yeah, again, I pick Canelo, but you know what? There's a path for Bivol to win.
You want to know something? I'm actually going to agree with you, what you're saying now. You convinced me because I think back to the Plant fight, which I thought Canelo was completely going to dominate and stop Plant.
And he didn't.
And he was given a tough night. And I think maybe, just maybe, Canelo has slipped. And maybe that was the fight where we should have seen the signs. I mean, it's one thing everyone gives Plant credit. He deserves credit for going, for being highly competitive before getting stopped. But maybe it wasn't the same Canelo. He's been around a long, long time. Maybe he is slowing down a little in the ride with Canelo. But listen,
wait, one more thing. That's plausible. Remember this. All the guys that gave Canelo trouble, Mayweather, Lara, Plant, guys, the boxers give him trouble. Not the tough guys and the macho guys that try to blast you out. The boxers give him trouble.
Yeah, No, I see it. No, I see a point there, Frank. But talking about upcoming fights, and the Canelo fights haven't been signed yet, but one that has to be signed very soon. I don't know, is the deadline tomorrow or whatever. Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte. And Dillian Whyte has held this thing up. He's unhappy about the 80-20 split in Fury's favor. I see his point, because usually mandatories, and Dillian Whyte is a mandatory,
Right.
would be 75-25. But the WBC, and it frustrates me, because I think Mauricio Suleiman is a sweetheart of a guy. He's really a nice guy, but sometimes some of his decisions I don't agree with, to make it 80-20 for Fury. So now Dillian Whyte, supposedly, the latest is, he's probably going to sign the contract, but he's not going to attend any of the press conferences. He's going to do nothing to promote.
He's not going to help build the fight.
Unless he gets paid. You want to know something, Frank? I disagree with it, but it is a brilliant maneuver on his part if he can get away with it.
And I think at the same time, he's getting under Tyson Fury's skin, which is very hard to do.
Yeah.
I have not seen anybody else do this. And here's the thing. It would be a crime if the fight didn't happen, because if you think about it, everybody's really high on Tyson Fury, and I would say he's probably the best heavyweight in the world right now. However, in the 3 fights with Deontay Wilder, he was almost knocked out in both of them. Dillian Whyte is a better fighter than Deontay Wilder. He may not hit as hard with single shot power, but he is an overall better fighter with a better IQ. So I would like to see that fight happen. And you know what? I'm not convinced that Fury is a gym rat and is always in good shape. Yes, Fury probably beats Whyte by decision or late round stoppage, but the fact that Wilder almost knocked him out cold in 2 fights, you can't write Fury off and say he doesn't have a chance. And also, the one thing he has going for him, if they do fight, is he's a pressure guy, and he can get inside and nullify the reach. Where Wilder has to be outside.
Dillian Whyte, Frank, he's not that good. He's not going to put any.
Jack, I'm going by his style. And remember, Wilder is an amateur.
You're right, but Dillian Whyte is long in the tooth. He got stopped by Povetkin. He beat Povetkin in the rematch. He stopped him.
And he was beating Povetkin the first time, Jack, and Povetkin's not a bum.
Yeah,
Wilder avoided fighting Povetkin.
I don't think it's much of a fight. I think Tyson Fury beats him easy. But let's see whether they sign. One fight that's taking place this weekend, Frank, okay? Josh Taylor against Jack Terrell. I saw Terrell fight once, I think, and I don't remember who the opponent was even. So I can't give an educated pick on that, but I know how good Josh Taylor is. I saw Josh Taylor fight a lot of times. So I know how good he is. And I got to admit, I'm a little disappointed how Josh Taylor's career has quite gone. After scoring big wins over Regis Prograis and
Ramirez,
he should have built on it. He had momentum.
Jack, I think he's waiting for the big fight. I really do. But I think he's hoping that maybe he gets Crawford. Well, but I'm a big Josh Taylor guy. I watched some Jack Catterall. Jack Catterall is a guy who lunges and leans in. If he catches you at the end of his shots, he can do some damage. I just think Josh Taylor is too good, too polished, too strong, too solid all the way around for a guy that basically fights like a sophisticated amateur. I don't see any way Josh Taylor loses. I think he wins the fight.
Yeah, Josh Taylor's at 140 pounds. A fight with Crawford is no longer viable, at least not at the moment, because Josh Taylor's with Top Rank, and Terrence Crawford just left Top Rank, and he's suing them. So The only way I could see that fight being made, if Terrence Crawford drops his lawsuit with Top Rank, if they make a fight with Josh Taylor, because Arum did talk about making that fight maybe in Ireland, but Arum would only make that fight if he had additional options on Terrence Crawford. And considering everything that went down and is going down with Terrence Crawford suing Top Rank.
Well, he called him racist and says he doesn't promote black fighters. So it's like Aram's not going to give in until that's dropped.
Yeah, well, and also, you take all these hotshot lightweights. No one's talking about fighting Josh Taylor at junior welterweight. Okay?
Well,
but listen, the one fight that I think is going to happen, maybe two fights, okay? And we both like this a heck of a lot. They haven't signed it yet, but it looks like it's going to happen. I hope negotiations don't fall apart. Vasily Lomachenko against George Kambosos in Australia. Now, as a fan, I like it, but I'm a little disappointed how Lomachenko's career is kind of playing out, because Lomachenko for a while was running neck and neck with Crawford for who was the best fighter pound for pound in
right.
boxing. A lot of people favored Loma. He's still a top 10 pound for pound.
I always like Crawford, but go ahead.
Right. That's fine. But the thing is, Lomachenko should be a star. Even with a close loss to Teofimo, fine. He lost that fight. He lost the decision. He didn't get beat up, Lomachenko, big deal. You lose one fight in your whole, basically in your career, not counting the second fight that he fought of his pro career against Orlando Salido. But this is a legendary amateur fighter, great pro, loses one close fight, maybe it wasn't close on the cards. And now Kambosos is dictating to Lomachenko, saying Lomachenko can only fight him if it's in Australia. It's okay that Lomachenko goes there, but Kambosos is going to insist on a rematch clause also in Australia. Lomachenko shouldn't be at the point of his career where he has to go to Australia to beat George Kambosos twice. Yet it seems like he's willing to do it.
And he doesn't have to. The thing is with Lomachenko, and why we should love him, is he wants to fight the best, and he wants those belts. He could go somewhere else and make some money, and nobody's ever going to accuse him of ducking Kambosos.
The rematch clause bothers me, Frank. He should only have to beat Kambosos once in Australia, not twice.
I agree with that, Jack, but what is he going to do if he wants all the belts back, and there's only one man that has them, and he has to beat him? And if he's willing to go to Australia, that tells me he is very confident in himself and has no doubt, has total belief that he'll win, and then he'll beat him again, and then he'll be the guy who can write order the menu, right off the menu, and pick who he wants to fight. But he understands losing to Lopez set him back a little bit, and the only way he can do that now, the only way he can get ahead now, is he's got to go to the other guy's soil and beat him convincingly, and then he calls the shots again. And Jack, think about this. Let's just say Lomachenko goes to Australia and puts a clinic on and beats Kambosos and says, you know what? I'm not honoring the contract. Everybody saw me kick your ass. I'm the best lightweight. You know what? Take the belts. I'll go fight somebody else. He could do that.
I'm not sure when they have.
He could do that, Jack.
It's hard to get out of. Case in point, Tyson Fury tried to get out of the Deontay Wilder rematch with Bob Arum, wanted out of it. The judge enforced it. They're kind of hard to get out of once you agree. And it's hard to find those.
But Lomachenko could do that, Jack.
He beats Kambosos and gets robbed in Australia. That's more of a concern.
That could be a concern, but I don't think that'll happen, because I think he'll beat him by a large enough margin that they can't take it. And you know me, I always am leery about certain things. But Lomachenko is the guy they want to hold the title, not Kambosos, because it makes for better business down the road.
And I like Lomachenko's attitude a lot more than Devin Haney's. Lomachenko's.
Devin Haney wants to be the king of Facebook.
I'm
sorry, or social media.
Lomachenko, if he approached the sanctioning bodies, his team, and asked to be given some type of title like interim champion, a franchise champion, he could get some type of title from one of the things. Devin Haney I hate to say it. I mean, a couple of years ago, I thought he was going to be a generational talent. The guy, I look at the guy and I laugh at him now. I mean,
he's skilled, Jack. He doesn't have that one ingredient, that DNA, to go to the next level.
No, he doesn't. Mentally, he's not there. He thinks he's a champion and he wants to unify the belts, and he hasn't won any titles. I mean, he's delusional, Devin Haney. And I was as high on him as anyone a couple of years ago. And now I look at him and I actually feel sorry for the guy. He's so delusional, you know. So I'm kind of glad. I want to see Lomachenko fight Kambosos just so Devin Haney could just go on his way, you know.
I would like to see Lomachenko fight.
Try and complain about not getting the fight, you know. He just doesn't get it.
Give me Lomachenko Kambosos and let Garcia and Tank fight, and the winners fight the winner.
Well, Garcia left Eddie Reynoso as his trainer, and he went to Joe Goosen. You know, like I think it was Joe Goosen, right? And
yes,
you know, switching trainers. But the bottom line is you have to fight. You can switch trainers all you want. Tanks with Mayweather. The latest is that Mayweather hasn't even paid Logan Paul the money he owes him. I wonder is Mayweather having financial problems? I want to tell you, Frank, I don't think this is going to happen because I think Mayweather loves his unbeaten record too much to ever risk it. But if Mayweather is truly tapped out financially
and has to fight,
and he can make a couple of $100 million in a fight, we've seen fighters come back who have no intention to. You never know, is what I'm saying. You never know.
Jack, I am not a Mayweather fan. You know, I think he's overrated in the ring. However, if he has blown almost $1 billion, that could be one of the saddest stories of any fighter ever.
Yeah. I mean, the money he owes Logan Paul. He keeps saying Mayweather. Well, fighters get paid over time, their full amount. We have to wait for the, you know.
Yeah, he said he's still getting checks from fights 6, 7, 8 years ago.
I never heard of that being the case. I mean, but listen, who's our spotlight fighter of the week? We spotlight one fighter from the past each week. Who do we have?
Jack, tonight we're going to look at heavyweight contender from the mid-70s, Ron Lyle. Ron Lyle fought from 71 to 80. He had one title shot. He turned pro in April 23rd of 71. I think Lyle is one of the best boxer punchers who has come along since Sonny Liston. He had posted wins over Mathis, Bonavina, Ellis, Rondon, Shavers, Bugner, and Ledoux. His losses were to Quarry, Jimmy Young, Ali, Foreman, Ball, and Cooney. I'm a big Ron Lyle fan, Jack. I think he was a victim of coming along at the wrong time when Ali, Frazier, and Foreman roamed the landscape. But he was a good boxer puncher. Remember, he never won the title, and that's what most people remember him by. But you know what? He's the only guy to hurt a near-prime George Foreman, as he did when he dropped him 2 times in January of 76. He knocked out Ron Lyle. He knocked out Shavers. I was a big Lyle guy. I think he gets lost in the shuffle from the heavyweights post-73 when people talk about Jimmy Young, Ken Norton, Lyle, and that crowd. I think Lyle may be one of the better guys of that lot. I always wanted to see him fight Norton. He never did. Norton wanted no part of him. George Foreman to this day says he's the hardest hitter, and nobody hit him or hurt him more than Ron Lyle did. The problem is he didn't turn pro until he was 29 years old. Think about this. Ron Lyle turns pro 1 month after the fight of the century between Ali and Frazier and works his way up. Lost to Quarry. Then he fights Young. Lost to him, gets a title shot against Ali, and in 3 fights in a row, he fights Ali, Shavers, and Foreman.
Yeah,
you don't see that today.
Like you said, he fought till 1980. He had fights after that, but they were.
Well, he came back in 95. He had 4 after he saw Foreman. he thought he could redo what Foreman did.
Yeah.
He knocked out 4 stiffs, and they realized he didn't have it and retired.
Frank, this is a true story. I saw Ron Lyle in his 4th pro fight at Sunnyside Gardens against the fighter Edmund Stewart. And I wasn't in the media, but one of the things I enjoyed doing when I got home after a fight show was to write about all the fights, the prelim fights. And I remember writing that Lyle and George Foreman are going to be on a collision course, that they were going to meet someday. I don't know why that stuck in my head, and boy, did that prediction, actually happen. I mean, Lyle was a pretty good amateur. He had a troubled past, he
was convicted of second-degree manslaughter.
Then he got knifed, and it was really a troubled, beginning. And then his coming out party was against Joey Quarry at the Garden. I was at the fight.
And he was a big favorite that night.
I thought Lyle was going to win that fight.
So did I.
Yeah, but Quarry, as it made a habit, you write him off and he bounced back.
He would show up. Yeah, that was maybe the best fight Jerry Quarry ever fought. And Ron Lyle says, I'm not sure I believe him, but he said that Quarry, after Ali, was the next best fighter he ever fought. And think about this too, Jack. Not many people realize this. Ron Lyle knocked out Dwayne Bobbitt twice as an amateur. And we almost saw
I
Lyle.
didn't know that, Frank. He knocked out Bobbitt twice.
He knocked Bobbitt out twice as an amateur, but in the Pan Am Games was the last time they fought. He was going to be the 72 U.S. representative at the Olympics when Bobbitt was stopped by Teofilo Stevenson, but he needed money, and he was afraid because he had a prison record that they would shaft him and never let him be the rep, so he turned pro. But if Bobbitt goes to the Olympics, we see Stevenson Lyle and not Stevenson Bobbitt. That would have been a hell of a fight.
I'm going to tell you, it's funny with Dwayne Bobbitt in the 72 Olympics. In the finals of the Olympic trials, he beat Larry Holmes, Bobbitt, to go to the Olympics.
He beat him twice as an amateur.
Right. But can you imagine had Holmes beaten Bobbitt and gone to the Olympics and then faced Teofimo Stevenson? Stevenson would have beaten Holmes at that point in time. He was too mature, but that would have maybe come back to haunt Holmes. People would always talk what could have been with Stevenson. They would have said, oh, he beat Larry Holmes in the amateurs. They would have made a big deal over it, a bigger deal than they should have.
And many people forget that Larry Holmes was not really considered a great prospect when he turned pro. In fact, Bobbitt was getting all of the ink, and they both came up at the same time. They never fought as pros. Bobbitt fought his big fight. His coming out party was against Ken Norton, and he got stopped. And Holmes beat his brother Rodney on the undercard of the Thrill Manila, but they never crossed paths. But Bobbitt stopped Holmes, and so did Nick Wells stopped Holmes in the amateur. So it's funny how the amateur thing goes, that like you just can't say, and I agree. If Stevenson fights Lyle in the amateurs and the Olympics, you got to make him the favorite. But boy, I'll tell you what, if you compare out on how they both did against Bobbitt, Lyle was much more impressive against Bobbitt than even Stevenson was.
Yeah, but speaking with Lyle, he was matched with a lot of named journeyman fighters who were once contenders, no longer in their peak. So they really matched them well with a lot of good names coming up. But when you think of Lyle's legacy, I think the two fights that stand out, obviously, I think people talk about first the Foreman fight. That's the biggest fight, on his
first guy to drop George Foreman.
Yeah, and also it was one of the greatest heavyweight fights of all time.
No doubt.
Okay. And the fight when he challenged for the title against Muhammad Ali was leading on points after 10 rounds and then got caught in the 11th and it got stopped. And it's always interesting if Ali didn't catch him and the fight went to 5 more rounds, what could have been. 2 of the cards, it was very close. And one, I think, once the scorecard had it even, the other, I think, had Lyle 1 point ahead. I thought Lyle was only up a couple of points. So the fight was...
And it looked like Ali was kind of carrying him a little bit and waiting for the right time to go. I never sensed Ali was out of the fight.
Yeah, Ali just, like some of his other fights, just didn't seem to be in the best of condition, for that fight. Ali,
and remember, Lyle was not going to go. Remember, Ali was doing the rope-a-dope back then, and he had the thing called the Mirage. I'm here, but I'm not. And Lyle said, I'm not going to make the mistake that Foreman made. And he didn't go after him enough. But when that fight ended, you could make a case. Two of the best punches Muhammad Ali ever threw were the left hook that dropped Bonavina in 70 and that right hand that put Lyle on the downward trajectory in the 11th round of their fight.
Anyone who's a fan, Frank, of the standing 8 count could point to Ali and Lyle, and that would have been a perfect time when Ali was, starting to unload on Lyle in the corner. And it was frustrating. Lyle wasn't punching back. It's like the ref had no choice.
I had no problem with that stoppage.
The moment they stopped the fight,
then he protested.
Right. So Lyle should have punched back. I mean, say what you want or whatever, but it was frustrating.
Yeah, he was too hurt. Now you remember before they fought, before Lyle turned pro, remember when they took Lyle 60 minutes to his special? And they took Lyle to Frazier's camp and Ali's camp before the fight. Do you remember that?
No.
Okay, they were grooming Lyle. He turns pro in April 71. In January, they take him to Miami and he spars Muhammad Ali. And Ali actually says to him, he goes, you can hit me as hard as you want. Brother, you can't hurt me. Don't worry about it. I'm controlling everything in here. Do whatever you can. They spar 2 rounds. Lyle really couldn't do much. Then they go to Frazier's camp. And Yank Durham would not let Frazier box Lyle, but he let Ken Norton box him. There's a fight that would have been interesting, Norton and Lyle. But anyhow, Norton boxes Lyle. Take your pick on who won. But it's funny, Ali would not box him, or Yank Durham would let Frazier box Lyle. And Ali even said when Lyle went there, he goes, they'll never let you in with Joe Frazier. He goes, you're too good. He goes, you'll make him look bad. You might knock him out. Just to dig at the Frazier a little bit.
Well, and I would have put my money on Frazier, being familiar with Lyle's career. But listen, Lyle had big moments. He stopped Ernie Shavers. Shavers was a front runner. He knocked Lyle down. Some people think Lyle was given a long count. I think the fight was in Denver, and then Lyle. It was. Lyle dropped him. Yeah. Shavers dropped Lyle with a left hook at the end of the 2nd round. And the thing about it, Lyle had earned his title shot with Ali. He took one last fight against Jimmy Young, and Young boxed his ears off. But I was happy that Lyle got the title shot despite the loss. He probably got less money than he would have gotten, but Ali still went ahead and fought Lyle. And so there was no damage done by the first loss to Young. And then Young repeated it again over Lyle. I mean,
a year and a half later. And if you think about Lyle, he could really punch. He couldn't punch like Shavers, but he was clearly the better fighter. And Jack, I know Ali stopped Foreman.
You got to get an anniversary fight in
for the title. But you know what? Nobody hurt George Foreman like Ron Lyle did. When Ali stopped Foreman, you or I could have pushed him over. He was so tired. Lyle cracked him, and he hurt him. And George Foreman got up from the grave after that 2nd knockdown and won the fight.
Let's get on the anniversary fight before we run out of time. February 6, 1967, the Houston Astrodome. Muhammad Ali wins a lopsided unanimous decision over Ernie Terrell, okay? And for me, Frank, that's the first fight I ever took interest in as a kid. Major interest. I mean, I watched other fights before that I was interested in, but the build-up to the fight, that's what I mean. I took the most interest in that. And I think it's nearly criminal the way people perceive Ernie Terrell's career. He had a great, great career.
He did.
But he's remembered for Ali's antics, Ali saying, "What's my name?"
during the 8th round.
And did Terrell bring it on himself, that abuse? Yeah, he did to a large degree. But the point that bothers me the most about that fight, Frank, is people who say, well, Ali carried Terrell
No way.
He did not carry Terrell.
He couldn't finish him.
No, he couldn't. He tried to finish Terrell when he hurt him in the 7th round, and Ali in turn got clipped with a big right hand and was holding on in that round. But Ali was at his brilliant best that night, and it's a shame. Instead of Ali being given the credit for turning in a magnificent performance, because Terrell held a bogus WBA heavyweight title. We all know Ali was a real champ. Instead of Ali being praised for his greatness inside the ring.
No, they remember his antics.
Right, exactly. So Ali, in a sense, cheated himself. But if I'm Ernie Terrell, who's no longer alive, what had to be going through that guy's mind? He had such a great career, but that's all that people thought about, the what's your name, incident during the fight. Tell me what you think.
You know what hurt him, Jack? After that, he goes into the WBA tournament after Ali is stripped, and he gets beat by Thad Spencer, I believe.
Yeah.
In the first round, and that kind of was pretty much the end of Terrell. He became a stepping stone. But I agree with you. A lot of Ali fans like to think he carried Terrell. No, he went after him, and he couldn't finish Terrell. And what's funny about the Terrell fight? Look, we both know Ali wins a lopsided decision. He only fought one time after that. That was his 6th title defense in 11 months. He knew they were coming. The draft was looming. They were supposed to fight in 66, but Ali was reclassified and said, I have no quarrel with the Viet Cong. So they wouldn't sanction the fight. But you can make a case. And I've seen guys argue over this, so I'll be interested to hear your point. Most people think of Ali as a 3-time champ. You can make a case 4-time for the fact that he had to beat Terrell to get that WBA belt back, because when he gave Sonny Liston a rematch, the WBA stripped him, and then Terrell fought Eddie Machen for the vacant WBA belt.
That's a great point, Frank. I never thought of that. You can, in this day and age, they would call Ali a 4-time champ.
He'd be a 4-time champ, even though, like you said earlier, he was the undisputed champ going into that fight.
Yeah, definitely, without question. But
Jack, think about this too. After Ali fought Terrell and whitewashed him, do you know he was set to fight after that? There was like a 3 or 4 fight schedule that they had tentatively planned before he was stripped after Foley. He fights Foley in March of 67, 6 weeks after he beat Terrell.
6 weeks, that's amazing. When can they promote that fight?
Exactly. And he had defended the title 6 times, 11 months. But his opponents after that, he had gone through the division so thoroughly that they were talking rematches with Chuvalo again, Patterson again, and Oscar Bonavena after that. He cleaned out the division in a matter of 2.5 years like we've really never seen.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how often fighters would fight, and you'd think, like you mentioned, Zora Foley 6 weeks later, just to promote the fight.
Yes.
You have a big fight against Terrell, and you're right back in training camp. It's like you don't have this today. Today, you have a big fight like that. It's 6 months later, maybe. It's a shame, Jack. Think about how these guys used to fight, and today we're sitting here on pins and needles, hoping that Fury will agree to take $10 or $12 million, the biggest payday of his career, to fight Fury for the title. And we don't even know if he's going to do it. Had a great time talking boxing with you, Frank, this week. If anyone listening to our show, if you like baseball, start spreading the news. It's on this network at 9 o'clock. Okay, it's a great, great show. I hear they always give us a plug. I was told. So we're giving them a plug. And okay, so it was great, Frank, talking boxing with you. Until next week.
Jack, we have a couple seconds left. Let me ask you a question. In their prime, the best Ken Norton against the best Ron Lyle, who wins?
Ken Norton.
No way.
Yeah. Well, let's pick up on that next week. I like Kenny Norton.
But you said that pretty quick.
Yeah, I just feel he was.
Why?
What?
Better fighter?
Lyle wasn't an explosive puncher per se. That might.
No, he would have been if he hit Norton. All right.
It's not a lot.
I'm going to do a post on that, Jack, and we'll see how it goes. I like Lyle.
Yeah, that's just. We'll talk about it more next week. We ran out of time. The 10 count came over me before I could respond.
Good night.
Good night.